Yeah, how about
Well, everyone, welcome back to a very exciting episode of his Storybox podcast. Today, my guest is Aaron Alexander. Now, for those of you that don't know who he is, he believes that the way to obtain true optimal health is through aligning our mind, body, and movement. The fundamentals are simple, and he is here to help us do just that. Aaron is a pioneering manual therapist, which we'll no doubt get into, and movement coach. He's a founder and creator of the Align Method, author of the Align Method book, and host of, get this, Align podcast as well, which is ranked number 1 in nutrition on Apple Podcasts. Aaron, can I welcome you so much to the Storybox podcast today?
Thanks for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming on the show, man. I'm very excited to unbox more of your wisdom and your advice and your story, obviously. My very first question for you, though, is what does success look like for you?
What does it look like as far as a future potential or the present experience of like ideal success?
We'll go
or
with
success
present,
in this moment.
We'll go with present experience for you.
I think success in the present experience for me would be, I think, just feeling at ease, feeling in a state of having access to being in a state of gratitude, being able to sleep, being able to go to bed at a normal-ish time and not have issues with sleep, not be paranoid or anxious or, have any type of resistance around that time frame. Being able to be free to, pursue what you'd like, be able to go outside, be able to get your bare feet in the ground, be able to get adequate sun exposure or as much sun as you'd like, breathing fresh air, having relationships that are meaningful, having people that really truly care about you really truly care about, that you can invest in, and feeling a sensation of that being something to build into, having your health, feeling like yeah, I think that's like, there's a quote, I don't know, probably lots of versions of quotes, but at some point in your life, the most important thing is going to be your health. Yeah. Or another version of that is there's people that don't have, how's it go? People that don't have if someone has their health, they have like many wishes. If someone doesn't have their health, they only have one. Yeah. So I think that like, that's like one of those things that there's so much to be grateful for in this life. It's very easy just to kind of forget about, because it's, typically the way that most people, myself included, operate and kind of focus on what the problem is, which makes evolutionary sense. So I guess that would be a starting point.
Well, what's the old saying? If you don't have your health, you got nothing, essentially.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, health is the foundation. It's what allows you to be able to process any other aspect of your life. But if the health is at a stop, then there's all resources go to health, which also is the number 1 leading reason for bankruptcy in the United States, at least, is healthcare issues.
Well, if you think about it as well, like if you are quite really, really wealthy, financially speaking, but then you have a health scare or a health issue and that continues for a long period of time and you don't get it dealt with, and you keep putting it off, then the first thing that really goes is not your finances, it's your health. Then your finances crumble. So
Sure.
If you're not really looking after your actual physical health, your spiritual health, your mental health, all those things. I mean, when we're talking about the whole idea of optimal health, what do we mean by optimal health?
You can mean so many different things for so many different people. Like the idea of functional movement is like a very cute concept because it doesn't actually mean anything. Like functionality is just exclusively based around what are your intentions. Yeah. So first, I think devising what is it that you would like to do with your body, what is it like you to do with your life, and then probably functional movement or optimal health would probably put you closer into that orientation. So there's ways to objectively measure health markers, obviously. But those don't necessarily get into like the quantitative or the qualitative aspects rather. So we're very, at least like Western culture is very quantitative.
Yeah.
It's like Western, Newtonian mechanics kind of vibe. But for a long time before that, like before, I think probably before Rome, probably be around that time, kind of like Greeks were very much more animist and, more pagan and more worshiping of nature and worshiping of, gods that relate to the weather. And it's very like connected to nature. And it's fairly recent that we got into a mindset that is more exclusively based around what's happening in our lives and our health at a quantitative level. So I think winding back and coming back into like just like how does a person feel? You could be really super duper orthorexically healthy, but still like not want to wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a lot of subjective aspects of being healthy as well. It's not just a number, but the numbers are convenient and they typically do coincide with feeling good as well. So what was the question? What is optimal health exactly? I think optimal health is really, it's just like feeling, I think if you feel stoked, you're probably pretty healthy. And if you're not stoked, what the hell does it matter? Like it doesn't really matter.
I agree with you on that front.
Yeah.
I'm curious about, so you're known for the Align method. Is there a difference between being aligned versus being balanced? Or they're two of the same coin? Are they cousins?
Being balanced?
Yes.
Yeah. I think aligned is just a word. So I started before doing the podcast and the book. I opened you call it a clinic for manual therapy. It's like physical therapy, manual therapy called Align Therapy. And, I think my background before that, a part of it was doing structural integration, which is all about alignment of the musculoskeletal system, particularly through the lens of fascia and connective tissue. And so that was my lens of finding alignment within people's joints, mostly, joint centration or finding neutrality, finding balance through the whole body. And then that just stemmed into eventually the Align method. But you can call it a lot of different things. I think like yoga, for example, the meaning of yoga essentially is alignment as well. It comes back to a word which means yoke or yuj, so union, connection. The word health also essentially is the same thing. It's from, I think it's an old English word, is like help. That means whole, so wholeness. The word religion comes back to the root of it, I believe it pronounced religio, which again means connection. So there's a lot of folks have been hitting at this aligned thing from a lot of different angles for a long time. I just come to it more from the physical lens, mainly because I think that physicality is just easier to talk about and show.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm like bold enough to be, to venture into the nutritional realms or venture into the spiritual realms or, these other aspects. Like physicality is easy. It's like, let me show you a push-up. And within that, you can build through creating alignment with the way that you squat or walk or throw or kick or punch or run. From there, that builds into maybe confidence, that builds into maybe sensitivity, because you're clearing out some of the distortion in your body. And distortion could be like maybe pain, sensation of anxiety, sensation of maybe depression, or whatever could be piggybacking along with your physical, musculoskeletal, endocrine, neurological, like all the part. They're all piggybacking with each other, like they're all continuous. So if you can start to create some alignment with this physical form, it clears the static. So the mind and the body, the emotions feel more at ease. And then that moves into probably decent relationships, probably a decent outlook in the world. So I think it's all connected, man. That's what I'm saying.
So have you seen patients that have been through some kind of trauma, whether it's mentally, and their body has got some sort of physical ailment as a result of that?
Interesting. It's definitely something I think about a lot. It's really hard I mean, yes, like depression for super common. You know, someone suffers from some big injury. I mean, most people listening to this probably have had some kind of experience like that before. The way that you express yourself, the way that you move energy, the way that you maybe balance your hormones, balance your neurotransmitters, just using like different language, is probably through you go for a run, you ride a bike, you go to your dance class, you go to your boxing class. If you shut that down, then people don't feel good. And so the moving in our body, as everyone knows, it's not just exercise. You know, it's not just to get stuff done. It literally is the way that we balance ourselves at a neurochemical, hormonal, you know, all of the levels. You moving your body and circulating yourself, like your lymphatic fluid, the way that your lymph drains and moves is through muscular contraction. So if the body is just still and pent up and sitting in a chair or a couch, you know, or an office seat or an airplane or, you know, all of that for too long without muscular contractions happening, the body becomes toxic. Yeah. It's not woo-woo, you're crazy, or it's not complex. It's very apparent. But a lot of what I experience in the modern world, which obviously, you know, I don't really know much about the past world because, you know, all I know is what I've been here, but the time I've been here. But I feel like there's just an immense amount of low hanging fruit, you could call it, around health, mental, physical, like all the aspects. We'll just say physical for this. But again, the mental, emotional is absolutely bound to the physical from my perspective. There's just so much low hanging fruit out there, and we're willing to reach for these advanced technological, expensive supplements and biohacks and all these different things. But I think there's a lot that we could clean up in our daily lives. It's like free, pretty much, you know, or very low cost, and like right under our nose. But we're reaching out and waiting for these advanced technological solutions for something that actually comes from, you know, typically just like as simple as being outside with more regularity, you know, and probably moving your body while you're doing it would be a great start. Cleaning up the water that you're drinking, you know, paying attention to the sourcing of the food that you're eating would be a relevant thing as well. You know, is there some type of intoxicant in the foods or some type of pollutant in the food that you're consuming that's actually disrupting your nervous system or disrupting your endocrine system? Are we pouring chemicals onto our body in the form of deodorants and colognes and perfumes and makeups, and shampoos and gels and like all the different things, creams that are literally endocrine disrupting chemicals that are stifling our body from just working normally, you know? And then do we have a resistance to like dirt, for example, which is like one of the healthiest things that a person could be exposed to. Not great to be around like human sludge. You know, we're not like New York City dirt, but like Sydney, Australia, like in the country, you know, like get out there kind of dirt. Like that's one of the healthiest solutions to your microbiome of, you know, your inside and your outside and your skin and your overall health, is to be open to that. Are we afraid of exposure to sunlight? You know, that's wild. Like the human body's been exposed to sun forever, if you believe in evolution or even creationism. You know, if you believe in creationism, it's at least been exposed to a lot of sunlight without sunblock for at least several thousand years. If you believe in evolution, it's like many, many millions of years. So suddenly for the sun to be this like toxic problem for us, that it's like the root of skin issues is wild. If you actually just put any pragmatism to it, just like think about it for a moment. And so obviously too much of anything is problematic. If you drink too much water, you throw up your sodium levels, you get hypernatremia and you die. If you get too much sun, you get sunburnt. Your body has a pretty nifty way of understanding when it's had too much of a thing. If you eat too much food, you're not hungry anymore. If you get too much sun, your body's like, it knows. It gets red, it gets hot, it gets tired. Oh, it's too much sun. So the idea that something that increases nitric oxide levels, something that balances your hormones, boosts testosterone and estrogen, and increases the size of your gonads, actually is an interesting thing. Like your balls increase in size as a product of exposing yourself to more sun. Your libido goes up. It's like you're growing your flower in a way. Like metaphorically and kind of literally in a way. So and then also people perceive others who are exposed to sun as being more attractive. Imagine that. If they're a little tan, they're more attractive. And if you're exposed to more sun, you're a bit hornier. Wow. Why would you be hornier? Probably because your body's set up in a position. It's like, I feel pretty good. We should procreate. So I think there's a lot of just baseline, and that's not even a hit on sunscreen. Like I think using zinc oxide, if you're gonna go surf or something like that, it's like use something that actually, zinc oxide, I'm just talking at this point, so you can at any time just tell me to shut up. But zinc oxide, something that's interesting about is it blocks the full spectrum of the sun. So it's more like you're wearing like a shirt over your skin, which is great. Wear a sun hat. If you're getting too much sun, you're going to be out. So you're in Ecuador and you're like an English ginger person, you need to watch out. Like you're not adapted. So there's so much nuance to all these conversations. In this case, it's around, sunlight, but there's also nuance around nutrition, nuance around exercise, nuance around all things. And we get these headline statements of like, sun is bad. You're like, okay, cool. That, I guess that's the rule for every person. Obviously no one ever said sun is bad, but too much sun is bad. It's like, well, what does that mean exactly? Yeah. And how much listening do I do with my own body compared to what I'm told in headlines that are changing all the time? what we've been, there was a time not too long ago in history that the idea that if you were over, I don't remember the exact age, it was like 40s, maybe 50s. The idea that your body starts to come to a point where it's like, oh, you don't want to work out too much because you're going to start to break your body down. That's not accurate. Like you want to get in the gym 50, 60, 80, not like keep working out, keep pushing yourself, keep nudging those hermetic stressors, stay out of like distress, but maintain the eustress as much as you can. All right, that's enough. I don't think I responded to any question. I literally just ranted for probably way too long, but here we are.
You brought up a lot of interesting points. For example, the fact that when you get more sun, your gonads grow, which I did not know. So that's another interesting fact. I'm sure my girlfriend's going to be happy about that fact. She'll be like, get more sun, Jay, because you're too white.
The suggestion, this is contention, but this is suggestion. There's been some kind of like shoddy research around this, but I think it makes sense. Is that sun, particularly exposed to your testicles, can facilitate the increase of testosterone levels. The research has been done with that isn't like great, to be honest, but I think again, just intuitively for a fella, 95% of your testosterone is created in your balls. So in the Leydig cells, specifically the cells that are producing testosterone in there. And if you're getting sunlight, or you could get like an infrared light would be a great thing. Infrared particularly penetrates deeper through the skin than other frequencies of light. And it would make sense to me that if it's that infrared light, and really, all the rays, but infrared and the reds, they just penetrate deeper. But I'd imagine all of them are, doing their own thing in their own different ways. Is going to be stimulating cells, like mitochondrial cells is particularly one that's kind of like famous for. I would imagine those frequencies of light are probably going to stimulate the cells that are also producing hormones such as testosterone. And I would imagine just intuitively that direct exposure of these infrared lights and, all of the spectrums to those cells would probably do something. But we wait for, and I don't care if anybody suns their testicles. I'm just saying, like, there's these aspects of just like intuitively being a human. Like, what would feel good? And do I need to wait for a research article and a peer-reviewed empirical study to come out? And then in 5 years, we find out, oh, that study was bullshit. And then, okay, well, this is the one. Well, historically, this is probably not the one.
Yeah.
And so much of the research that we garner is thrown away anyway. So there's a bias in the research that's conducted. So it's like listening to a news channel. You're listening to Fox or CNN or, who are you listening to? So then you wind that back. It's like, oh, interesting. Could there be some politics to our health, to our nutrition? Like the answer is yes. To how corrupt or nefarious it is. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes back to money. And also a lot of it comes back to just proving your own bias. Like I think that's the big thing is we all want to be right for the most part. And the more a person can kind of step back and relinquish themselves of attachment to them being the winner and just being like, I'm really truly here as a scientist. Yeah. I really just am open, unbiased. I prove me wrong. Like, please prove me wrong. But I think that something that would be really valuable for any person really is to just come back and acknowledge, okay, interesting. Seems like the things I hear on the news and these studies that I hear about that are, from God and they're correct for 3 years and then they're proven incorrect. Seems like that happens with enough consistency that at least it would make some level of sense to invest some aspect of my consciousness into like listening to what feels good in my body.
I think you're right to some degree. Like I do see a lot of research papers being put out there, especially around the whole diet thing, and they're constantly changing. I mean, even in Australia, they'll put out an article or some degree saying that alcohol is good for you. Then they turn around and say that alcohol is bad for you, so don't drink it. And then the only thing that is really, really consistent for a lot of scientists and health practitioners is that smoking is bad for you, so don't do it. Well, I think a lot of people can agree on that front. But then when it comes down to sun exposure, they're like, okay, well, the timing around how much sun you should get, what's that? The timings, people were saying, so-called experts are saying 20 minutes a day, get that. Good for you. It's just like, I think it all comes down to a personal decision, whether or not they choose to live this way, believe this way. And if you're not harming anyone else with that, so be it. Like, live the life that you want to live ultimately. As long as you are feeling like you have optimal health yourself and you're not harming anyone around you, then that's what I see it as being, man. I personally have some level of resistance around words like optimal as well, because optimal doesn't really exist. So you have what feels ideal in the present moment to you now, like yes or no. Is there something to use? Is there some feeling, sensation, or quantitative stat or something that you would seek to improve upon? But the idea of like optimizing to me, a word like that, it sounds very computerish. It sounds like something that you would, you'd optimize your MacBook or something. And I think it works for some. It works for some people. I think it's fine. But I think that like a potential issue, I think it works if you feel like you are quote unquote optimized. But for the large majority of people that probably do not feel as though they are quote unquote optimized, it likely creates a distance or like a chasm between actually being in a place that would induce optimization, which would be probably acceptance of like, you know what, I'm pretty good. Like, I feel pretty fucking good. Yeah.
compared to almost like this self-alienation in a way, of like, oh, okay, I'm gonna do these things, I'm gonna get optimized. I'm going to get optimized compared to I am optimized. There's distance between that. Yeah. And so if you're running the operating system that I am going to be happy when, I am going to be optimized when I get that new infrared light thing, I get the new cold plunge thing, I get the new whatever supplements, I will be optimized. So that I think that's something, maybe for some people they might, not find that relevant, but I think that there is something there to adjusting one's, I'm using a computer analogy, but your operating system of perception.
Yeah.
Of, are you able to, and is there value in coming in and actually really truly looking at yourself now and be like, you're fucking great. We're as optimized as we need to be right now. Like, I fucking love you. Now, okay, cool. Fuck yeah. All right. Let's get some supplements. Let's go for a run.
Yeah.
Like, let's build a relationship.
Let's get some sun.
Let's get some fucking sun. Let's grow our gonads. But that would, again, it comes back, a lot of this, our perception really, truly, and I'm involved in this as like a person that does social media. And I try to be sensitive to it, but they're like the natural, free, basic, easy, right under your nose things typically don't have affiliate codes, and they're typically not going to be promoted on people's social medias as much because there's no financial incentive to do so. So there's a lot of marketing to people from the health sphere that you will be optimized when you buy this shit.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I love supplements. I'm literally surrounded by gadgets, in my place. I have a cold plunge sitting right here. I have a paddleboard sitting here. I have like a little rebounder trampoline sitting beside here. I've got a, infrared light right beside here. I've had a UV light shining at me for the last little bit that I just turned off. I think that I love leveraging technology, and I would be totally fine without any of this shit. And I think that's like a very important thing to digest.
Yeah. I think there's, probably me using the word optimal or something like that in the context that I was using it. I probably might need to adjust it a little bit. Let's just say
whatever. It works for some people.
Yeah.
Quantified self works for a lot of people too.
Yeah.
I'm not like a huge fan of it because it's like, you're going to tell me I'm going to look in my cell phone to give myself a B plus, a 82% sleep score.
Yeah.
So now I'm taking my attention away from, I know how I slept. You know how you slept. Do you feel good?
Yeah.
Like a person, and there's actually has been research around this. If you tell a person they didn't sleep well, it will actually make them feel shittier. If you tell a person, even if they didn't sleep that good, if you tell a person like, oh no, like the stats say you slept great, you're like, hey, you're right. I mean, I feel pretty good.
It's like giving you extra reassurance, right? From technology to say, hey,
so you're just leaning in, mother tech. Like bring tech in, but allow tech to sit at your table as opposed to you sitting at tech's table.
Yeah, I think going off this is how I feel in the present moment is a lot better than trying to future-proof yourself and saying, I want to get to this stage, but I think being focused on the here and now is a lot better, in my opinion. Like, how do I feel in this present moment, and what can I do in this present moment to better improve myself?
Yeah.
And not listen to all the rubbish out there, because I know there is a lot of rubbish.
You just have to have your ability to adjust your aperture.
Yeah.
So if you're always
perspective, okay.
Yeah. If you're always future based, then what do they say? If you're always in the future, you're like anxious. If you're always in the past, you're depressed or something like that.
Yeah.
whatever, it's, if you're always in the future, that's totally fine, but always is a problem. If you're always just in the present, it would probably be really great for you to like get a journal out and do some visioning of like what you think would feel nice, of where do you want to go, or be able to think of like, okay, like what would, obvious stuff. Like I'm going to plan this weekend, what would make this weekend amazing? So having the balance to be able to do that. But if you were just always in that place of thinking, I think the big problem is I will be happy when, I will be optimized when, I'm like, my mind just lives out here of, this future version of myself that I'll finally love.
So I think that's more thing, right?
Yeah. I think that's more the problem. I think ideating around what would be cool in the future is great. But if you're running the OS that I will be fill in the blank felt state when, I think typically that's bullshit.
Yeah. Because you're trying to achieve something, and if you miss the mark, you're just creating more problems and more havoc for yourself. You're creating more anxiety for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like this. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're going to be generally disappointed typically. Most stuff. Like there are probably some things, maybe like having a baby or something might feel rewarding. But you're still going to feel the same.
Yeah.
Like you like you'll see your digital number click over to whatever, and suddenly you're a whatever it was that you were hoping to be. And then you do not feel any different. Like there's a moment of like, oh, cool. Like, should we do something? But like your actual felt state, there's not a big shift based off of what's happening in the periphery. And I think that's even something that's really valuable for people that actually go through challenging things, which I don't think I've really gone through anything that challenging in my life. Maybe like childhood, there's been things that are, a little tough, but generally my life is, I think I've been, pretty soft, I would say. So I more like read books about people like Viktor Frankl who went through, various different Nazi, encampments, and had to rewrite his whole book on toilet paper after the Nazi folks ended up like burning his first rendition of it. His thing is called Logos Therapy. Man's Search for Meaning is like, I don't know if it's only his only book. It's definitely his most famous book. But somebody like that where it's like, oh, like you really understand stress and trauma and like having like a rough go. A lot of times those people through necessity end up either, dying, destroying themselves or being destroyed, or coming up with almost like this like unshakable mind in a way. Whereas a lot of folks, I might fall into this category actually, but some people fall in this category more than I do. Small, tiny little bullshit things will completely throw them into like a tailspin.
Yeah.
And like nothing actually happened. Like you are just so fragile. Like nothing happened. Like you got a $50 ticket or something, and you're raging, breaking a window, or whatever the thing is. You get the wrong coffee order and you're like a terrible person to your barista. Like that individual, I don't think that's a happy life. So they got a good deal, but within that, there wasn't a training regimen to actually build their emotional muscles, build their perspectival muscles. And that's not a good disposition to be in.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting the way that our perception gets shifted and how it's it almost like necessitates a certain level of hard things in order to live a good life. I think it's kind of interesting thing how that works.
No, I wrote this book, my first book, based on trying to help people that were going through those difficult times to say, look, you've got two options. You can either go this way, which is not going to serve you well, or you can go this way, which is a much better path towards healing, towards growth and ultimate fulfillment. That's all your choice to make. Viktor Frankl, I think he wrote several books. I've got two of them.
I'm sure he wrote a bunch.
He's got Yes to Life. which is another great book. I think a lot of people should actually read.
Right.
And it's sort of giving this idea of being able to, whatever comes your way, accepting it, embracing it as being good for you. Doesn't matter if it's bad, because it's ultimately going to be there for your growth if you choose to see it that way. And that's the point of saying yes to this challenge and lean into it more, because the more you lean into it, the more you learn. Sure, it might be painful, but that's life. It's the beauty of life, is when you do go through pain and you got a lot of health struggles. Like in my book, there's so many things that I've been through, man, that have taught me a lot of great life lessons. I'm not there. I never will be. I'm still learning, which is a great thing. But I can show people this is what I've been able to learn now through going through a bunch of health issues, and then now being in the more present moment and focusing on, okay, if I want to go for a run, I'll go for a run. But if the plan changes tomorrow with how I feel, that's okay too. I'll adjust, I'll adapt, and then I'll move forward as best I can with that new knowledge. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it's like very Buddhist. It's like the attachment is the root of all suffering. And so within that, and I just recently recorded a podcast all about Buddhism with a fella that he's like a Buddhist teacher. So he taught me about the four. How do they call it? What's the four truths, I think is what it's called. The first one is that suffering exists. The second one, if I remember correctly, is that there is a reason for suffering, and that reason is attachment, essentially. And then anyway, eventually gets to like the eightfold. I believe it's called the eightfold path to ending suffering. I think that's the terminology for it. And essentially, it just goes through a bunch of. Well, the interesting part about that is just like suffering is an inextricable aspect of the human experience. Yeah. And there is a reason. It's not just this everywhere. It's like, oh, I just suffer. No. There's a reason that it's here.
Yeah.
And it's because of a perception of I need things to be this way or I won't be happy.
Yeah.
Okay, very vulnerable place to occupy your humanhood from. And so within there, it's like, okay, well, interesting. So there is a reason. There's like science to this. So now how do we start to loosen those binds up a little bit? And I don't think any person just suddenly becomes impervious to like any life happening, and they can just, because I think that would be, that would go into the other direction where it's like, well, now you're maybe just disassociated.
Yeah.
So now you're kind of a psycho in another direction. So it's like, okay, no, like a little more association, like be with the fact that this sucks and be able to emote, be able to cry, be able to let whatever needs to come through, move through, be able to observe that from a non-judgmental lens and say, I'm screaming. I feel rage, like beautiful. I love your rage. Like I love my rage. And like, oh, I feel sad now. It's like, oh, I love that for you. Like none of the colors are bad. And then typically on the other side of that, like the reduction of the judgment and, probably the reduction of the attachment, to the attachment could be like, oh, I need to be in this state or I'm not okay. I need to be really happy. I need to be really confident. Any of that, that's more attachment stuff. It's like very sticky territory.
Yeah.
And so then on the other side of that, I think the set point of the human is equipoise, balance, ease, align. I think that's like the root ground floor state. A baby comes out, unless there was some type of situations, which certainly could be, generally the baby's like pretty aligned. They're pretty balanced. They haven't been tampered with that much if they had a good birth. But if they hadn't, had a quote unquote good birth, then they've kind of been tampered with. If the mother was not using drugs, or, there was some issue that's kind of like, whoa, okay, there's a little contraction here.
Yeah.
And so I think that the root, if you pull back the layers of the hurt and the pain and the trauma and the fear and the guilt, the big issue, I think, is the guilt, the shame, the avoidance. Everything else just is. Everything else is just a bunch of stuff. It's the guilt, the shame, the avoidance, and other adjectives around those lines that cause it to you pack it in and you hold it. Now we have a breeding ground for some kind of problem. Who knows how it's going to manifest? Yeah. But I think that the human, if it feels safe enough to allow whatever the life circumstance is to just move through the human, and we dance and we move and we play drums and we go for a run and we play soccer or football, or and we get sunlight and we circulate and we drink, good water, and we drink decently sourced food, and we talk it out, and, we have sex, and we move and shake our bodies, and we reduce the layers of judgment. I think for the most part, on the other side of that is going to be some sensation of ease. But if not, then you get wrapped up.
Easier said than done for a lot of people, but
yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm talking like idealistically right now. I'm not saying that this isn't coming from any, high hill, follow my path.
No,
I'm like, this sounds pretty cool.
I don't think it's coming from that either. I think I released a video not long ago, and someone commented saying easier said than done. And I'm like, I completely understand that. I was once where you're at saying the same thing, but through life experience and going through a lot of challenges. And sometimes I'm human, so I'll say, why is this happening to me? Of all the times it's happening to me. So I'll put the attachment onto myself. And it's this constant journey, man, of learning how to get back up after you've been knocked down by some of the things that life throws at you, and understanding that we choose to suffer for however long we want to. That's really the reality of it. As much as I've experienced it, sure, we will suffer, but we have that choice available to us to remove the suffering when we want to remove it. I'm saying feel your way through it. Definitely don't bottle it up. Don't keep it inside you. Release it, like everything that you were just talking about. But don't stay there. Don't stay suffering. Don't stay longer than you need to. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
I agree with that.
And definitely get more sun. Males, now grows your gonads. Just going back to that. On that same, I'm going to.
It's the same thing from my understanding for female ovaries as well. Just like the sex organs get a bit
just all
enlarged.
Huh.
It's kind of like, you do certain things, it changes the shape and size of your body parts. If you meditate, it's going to increase the gray matter around the hippocampus or hippocampi. It's going to decrease that of the amygdala. And there's a lot more going to the brain than just like hippocampus good, amygdala bad. Not that at all. But you do a thing, and your structural physiology augments based off of this new information. Yeah. So the idea that you're getting sun and it's increasing your sex hormones, the fact that would also probably correlate with some structural shift is like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's not like it's like, oh my God, like this is crazy. It's like, no, it's like this is very logical. If you work out at a gym and you put more stress on a muscle, it will probably get a little bigger. It's not like this like crazy idea. I think the body is very simple. Like it's immensely complex, but also very like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like if it's not like, oh yeah, I see that, it's probably not real. Like most things, it's like, oh yeah. It's like sun exposure. Like I couldn't see, evolutionarily speaking, like understanding like any aspect of the history of the human, like it would probably make sense that'd be decent. We've exposed our feet to the ground for a long time. Interesting. There's research suggesting that reduces inflammation in the body. And there's this bioelectric human is a thing. It's relevant. We're essentially like we're like walking batteries, like batteries with batteries inside of batteries inside of batteries. And the way you charge those batteries up is through friction and movement and sunlight and grounding. It's like, oh yeah, that's checks out. Like that's not like this crazy complex idea. But I think we're willing to like buy a lot of really wild, abstract, complex stories of what's happening in the body. Meanwhile, some of the things that just seem like elementary and almost like dumb, it's like not that interesting to some folks probably.
Humans just are very good at complicating things that are usually simple. And
right.
What's your take on the Liver King?
He's fine. I think he does more good than bad. I think he's a great marketer. He's brilliant in that way. I think if you actually listen to him, he's like pretty on it. I think he actually is quite correct.
It makes sense.
Most things that he suggests. The idea of like a person being carnivore is fine, but I think there's humans almost certainly, from my perspective, have just the way we're adapted to treat the stress of exercise, which from an immediate lens could seem a little destructive and inflammatory. We end up, it's a we have a hermetic response to that, and it ends up making us stronger. I think that's probably seems like that would line up with maybe certain herbs that we might take for medicinal purposes, or like Hippocrates, treat food as your medicine type perspective. So there's probably a lot of medicinal qualities and a lot of really beautiful fruits and vegetables and all of that in the world. And I think a lot of the issues that, from my perspective, I would kind of align a little bit with like a Gundry, Dr. Gundry perspective, a bit of looking like, yes, there is such a thing as lectins and phytates and all things. This isn't something I know a ton about. I kind of like stay out of the nutritional conversations for the most part, but there are these things that are, the plants develop compounds because they're stuck in the ground, so they're not going to run away from you or like fight you away. So maybe they'll create some type of chemical compounds as defense chemicals. So then within that, it's like, okay, well, if you were to just eat a potato raw out of the ground, it'd be like, this sucks. Like, there's nothing nice about this. It's not palatable. It's like tough on my digestive tract, probably. So you prepare it. Yeah. So I think pressure cooking, I think fermenting, there's a lot, like if you're missing out on fermented foods because you buy the dogma that all you can do is eat animal based, because in the last 6 months, Paul Saladino, or maybe the last 2 years, Paul Saladino blew up, and now Liver King blew up in like the last year. And now suddenly your whole nutritional sphere has just completely been flipped upside down. Like, there's probably more nuance to it than that.
Yeah.
But behind the nutritional part, I think that everything he says, for the most part, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. I think it checks out from my perspective. It's very simple. He's not saying anything really that crazy. The only thing he's saying that's like gets a little like crazier is about the only product that he sells.
Yep.
So there's money there. All the other stuff he doesn't talk about that much, and it's all legit. Where it gets really amplified, almost to like a mutated level, is like, oh, if you eat liver, it will be the solution to every aspect, your relationships, your business, your gonads, like you just need to eat those animals, just eat the fucking animals. It's like, well, hold on. There's more to it than that. There's more nuance to it than that. Yeah. And this is where the money is coming from. So there will be a bias towards that. And if you were to consume his content through the lens of that bias, where it's 98%, you need to eat as much animals as possible and you'll be fine. And here's the animal supplements to buy, because I know you're not going to eat organs. Or here's the protein powder with organs in them. And if you actually live your life 98%, okay, I eat organs, I eat animals, I'm good. 2%, the other tenets from the Liver King, you'll have a very imbalanced experience. But the reality of the way that the Liver King actually lives his life based off of what I've gathered, I think seems great. It's just the bias is towards where the money is coming from. And that's where it gets kind of like weird and confusing, I would think.
He's also really entertaining. Like,
yeah, he's great. He's an entertainer. Yeah. He's a salesperson. He's great.
He's really, really good at it. And I don't care too much about the whole eating liver thing or eating some of the things that he does eat. Like he'll eat bull's testicles because apparently that helps our testicles get bigger too and improves our sex drive. And I'm just like, it doesn't work for me. Nah, I'm not gonna eat someone else's balls for the sake of protecting my own. I know, like, doesn't make sense to me. I'd much rather have a Brazil nut that has selenium in it that helps my hormones rather than eating a bull testicle, which I know probably doesn't have the hormones that work for me, if that makes sense. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's not for me.
I don't have enough meaningful information in like an embodied, like, oh, I know this way around that stuff to actually have a meaningful opinion to share about it. I could see there's disputes back and forth. There's a term for it. The idea that if you eat liver, it's going to be good for your liver. If you eat balls, it's going to be good for your balls. If you eat brains, it's going to be good for your brain. Like intuitively, I get that there's probably some sense to that. You know, if you're eating liver and the raw components of what is in a liver, you're going to be eating those vitamins or minerals or, you know, whatever. Like, I could see that, but I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. I think, like most things, I think it's probably like, it's not just if you eat a ball, it's just going to suddenly go through digestive tract and just like blow your balls up. And likely there might be some nutrients in there that would facilitate, you know, your sex hormones or something of the sort, would be my intuitive guess. But I don't know enough about it to have a meaningful opinion.
Me either. I'm just sort of spitballing there. So yeah, the way my mind works, I'm trying to get my head around it, but I'm still trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the science behind it? Is it really accurate? I've heard both sides of the argument a little bit, but once again, I'm just like, whatever. If you want to eat liver, if you want to eat balls, testicles, and it works for you, by all means, fine, whatever.
Are you like vegetarian or something? Do you have resistance? It sounds like you have some resistance around organs.
No, I'm not vegetarian at all. Like, I just prefer to not eat animal organs. Like,
really? Oh, yeah. Why? That's weird. Why? I mean, weird's actually a fine word, but like, why? I don't know.
I think
why would you be open to eating muscle bellies of an animal, but you'd be averse to eating like a heart or an organ or the parts that are actually prized in nature?
I think,
and I'm not challenging you saying you're wrong. I'm really just genuinely curious, like your logic around that.
I think my logic around it has always been, I just don't maybe taste as well eating that part of the animal. I mean, I'll eat pork belly. That makes sense. Right. I'll eat majority part of the pork. Same with the cow. I'll eat the vast majority portions of the cow. Same with the lamb. But I just won't eat the organs because for me, the organs either taste or just trying to get my head around the fact that I'm eating another animal's organs.
Interesting.
Doesn't really bode well for my mind at all.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at, I would typically with questions that have gone through the complexity of bias and sales and, you know, all the distortions that happen as a product of, by the time a conversation makes it to like a social media post or a podcast, I would come back to what are animals doing that eat meat. And there's two things. One, if you see an animal hunt another animal, they're going to gore the organs, and then the other parts would kind of be like the secondary aspect of it. For my understanding, for a very long time in history, you know, the organs would be like the prize part, and the other aspects of the animal would be like, okay, that's for the dogs. It's like there's been something around the organs for a long time. And then another aspect of that is if a human eats nose to tail, they can not just survive, but for, if you're like a Michaela Peterson or, somebody of the sort, actually do like very well. Whereas if you're just eating the muscle bellies, you're not going to get the full nutrient profile to actually be able to, again, not just survive, but for some people actually do well. I don't know if everyone would do well in an all animal diet. My guess is most people, this is way outside of my scope. My guess is most people, and this is, I'll just say my guess. Most people that are following the SAD diet, like the standard American diet, or probably a standard Australian diet as well. Acronym still stands. If they did just switch to eating a all animal diet, just for the fact that they would be cleaning their diet up of so much irritating, preservatives and sugars and all the problems. My guess is most people would probably get like, whoa, like this new surge of energy and feel really healthy. And then that would probably start to wear off. And then it would be like, okay, now what? But most people, when they start a new diet, they feel really good. Like you start becoming a vegan, you're like, wow, I feel so much lighter and amazing. And then suddenly you have this deep urge to have choline from an egg. And it's just like, oh, and then you finally eat an egg, 2 years later, and you have like this full body orgasm, which is literally a story that I've heard from, I think 2 people, one person for sure. He literally, it was a girl, girl's orgasm, I think a little easier, but literally had an orgasm as a product of, at least that's how they describe it. They might've been embellishing, but one anecdotal story of a friend of mine, vegetarian for a long time, but just could like feel it, like there was like a deep cellular starvation happening somewhere. And suddenly they had a little egg yolk and it lights their cells up. Anyways, those are 2 separate tangents, but I think that if you look at nature, it would make it just objectively just like, what does nature do? And then of course there's arguments of like, well, what's the constitution of, human intestines compared to a wolf, compared to like any animal that's predatorial. So there's like a lot of nuance in that conversation as well. So coming back to, okay, there's a lot of bullshit. There's a lot of things that are stated as facts, a lot of science that's stated as facts. That changes in 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Okay, come back to intuition, what seems right. Okay, do your own version of exclusion diets, probably. Cut out meat for a while, see how you feel. Cut out whatever, sugar, caffeine, anything, heroin, whatever you're doing. Cut it out, see how you feel. Do you feel better on heroin? Heroin might be fine for you. Do you feel better on vegetarian? It might be fine for you. As opposed to having one blanket statement of like, this is it. I, random person on the internet, know what's better for you. I've never met you. I don't know anything. I don't know what you even means. So it would probably behoove you to come back and say, okay, this nutritional stuff is very shifty. I think the one thing that seems fairly consistent is what feels good in my body. And so then it's like, okay, what feels good in my body? And then I would also say like, okay, what's most consistent with nature? Okay, what feels good in my body? What seems most consistent with nature? Okay, now we can overlay that like the new stuff. The things that have been innovated in the last 500 years, or more specifically the last like 100 years, and more specifically the last like 30 years.
I've been guilty of this in the past, but more these days I have what I call the freedom diet, the ability for me to actually choose what I want to eat, obviously focus more in trying to be as healthy as I can. So I'll have meat, I'll have vegetables, I'll have fruit from time to time, I'll have things that I actually want to have, and it works primarily for me. These people that go to the extreme, like vegan, carnivore, the whole thing, I'm just like, okay, fine. You can do all that. You can eat whatever you want. I'm not going to, because a lot of people have arguments over it. Like, this is a lot better for you. This is a lot better for you. And I'm just like, okay, fair enough. Like, I'm not going to get involved in that kind of argument. I'll ask questions around it. I'll get a lot of different answers usually. But for me, I know what works for my gut, my health. I feel great as a result of being on it. And I'm happy. Because
a better usage of language, just in general, would just be, this is a lot better for me.
Yeah.
There's way less like accusatory. It's way less like you don't know, I know. Yeah. I don't know who you are. I don't know. Like, you might not have intestines. Like, who am I talking to? So what can be true is, to the best of my knowledge, and I know that I don't even know everything about myself, because if I knew myself 25 years ago or 20 years ago or 10 years ago, I'd be like, oh, you didn't know anything about, what you thought at that time.
Yeah.
So like, okay, also, I don't really, truly, even absolutely, objectively know me, but to the best of my knowledge, this works best for me now. I was like, oh, that feels honest.
Well, and I'm glad that it works for me, because I've if people know my story, they know that I've got a myriad of health problems, and especially that resulted in some poor diet choices, and you name it. Like, I've been there, done that, don't want to do it again. So I'm quite happy doing what I'm doing now, because it works for me and I feel 10 times better. And I think it's definitely okay to question other diets, scientists, doctors, you name it, nutritionists, and ask them, okay, well, why? Tell me why. It's okay. It works. It's all right to do that, but just don't. Yeah, I don't go around accusing or judging other people for the way they live their life. I mean, I'm the last person that should do that at all. Anyway,
we're probably all the last person that should do that, really. But
yeah, we can get down a long tangent on that. But I know that time has sort of run long, because I'm really enjoying this conversation. A lot of things we could touch on, man. But my final question for you, this is my all-time favorite question. I love asking all my guests at the very end. It is a hypothetical one. So I want you to imagine with me for a moment that you've been able to reach the age of 100. All your friends and your family have decided to put together a film for you of everything you've ever said and everything you've ever done. Don't ask me how in the world they got it all. We'll call it magic for the sake of argument. They've been able to get it and show it to you on your 100th birthday. What do you want that film to say and to show about your life?
The film's for me to see, or it's for me to like leave behind?
You can leave it behind as well. You're going to see it, and you're obviously going to leave it behind.
So it's like my what I share with my 100 years. Probably be something like, it'd either be like a joke, like fuck hard or something. I think that would be a good one.
A line and fuck hard.
I think something like that. I kind of think I like that one. I think I'd probably go fuck hard. I think life's short, fuck hard. I think maybe, or I'd do something that's like, a little more tender and be like, love courageously or something like that, or love boldly. Love boldly, fuck hard, line your shit.
It works.
I think that'd be my shit, yeah.
It works. Well, Aaron, man, thank you so much for your time. Having this conversation with you. There's a lot more topics that we could touch on, but I'm grateful for this conversation. But thank you for joining me on the Storybox podcast today.
Yeah, man, good times. If people, I mentioned before, we're doing I guess I don't have the link for it right now, but we're doing so we're launching a program. Everything that we talked about today doesn't have really any association to anything that I do, which is completely fine. It's great. I like having just like wild conversations. But what I actually do is really teach people how to tend to their bodies. So that's like joint mobility and, functional, quote unquote, functional movement, defining what that means for each individual person. So we're launching a 6-week program and it'll be early December. And if people are interested in that, essentially what that's going to be is it's the first 2/3 of it takes a person that's like a traditional workout, kind of like bodybuilding, muscle and fitness style, Globo gym type person, and achieves or re-achieves full functional range of motion of every joint in the body. first. And then from there transitions into moving more like a human, I say. So like being able to run, throw, kick, and things of the sort, punch. And then it gets into week 5 is nervous system regulation, particularly using breath and vision. And then the week 6 is how to orient your environment so that your existence, your day-to-day life just makes you, more flexible, stronger, healthier, leads you towards longevity and things of the sort. Since I don't have a link for that right now, that will be at alignpodcast.com. And then, host Align Podcast. Social media, all the things are Align Podcast, YouTube, Instagram, all the things. People want to go deeper into actual like educational shit. I don't think this is more just talking about things that I'm not really exactly sure I know a ton about, but I enjoyed it. And there's a bunch of educational shit if you just type Align Podcast into the internet.
Well, this one was different, man. But when I get the link, I'll make sure it's linked below.
Yeah, link it below.
But this is great, man. Appreciate it.
Cool. All right, appreciate you, man. Have a good day.